If you want to build serious wealth without a huge salary, the first thing you need to understand is that wealth and income are related, but they are not the same thing. That sounds obvious, but most people do not actually live as if they believe it. They look at high earners and assume high income automatically becomes high net worth. They assume the person making twice as much must be building twice as much wealth. They assume a modest salary means modest financial potential. And because of that, they quietly give away one of the biggest advantages in personal finance, the ability to build wealth through behavior systems, patience, and ownership, even without extraordinary pay. Now, let's be honest. A bigger salary helps. More income gives you more room, more flexibility, and more margin for mistakes. Nobody should pretend otherwise. But a huge salary is not a requirement for serious wealth. In fact, one of the most common financial surprises in adult life is discovering how many people earn impressive incomes and still do not have meaningful wealth. They have a high consumption lifestyle, high recurring costs, high financial pressure, and not much actual ownership. Meanwhile, someone else with a far more ordinary income quietly builds assets year after year and ends up far stronger financially. That is the game we are talking about today. Because serious wealth is not mainly built by looking rich. It is built by consistently owning more than you owe, keeping more than you spend, and directing the gap into assets that grow. That formula is less glamorous than most people want, but it is far more reliable. So if you are someone who does not have a giant salary, this is actually good news. It means your path is not blocked. It just means your strategy has to be sharp. The first principle is this: your savings rate matters more than your financial image. A lot of people get trapped trying to appear more financially successful than they really are. Better apartment, newer car, more dining out, premium, everything subscriptions, everywhere, lifestyle upgrades that feel small individually but expensive collectively. And once those expenses become normal, they start behaving like permanent employees working against your future. That is why two people with the same salary can end up in completely different financial universes. One person spends almost all of what comes in and tells themselves they will start saving later when they earn more. The other protects a healthy gap between income and spending and treats that gap like the engine of future freedom. That gap is everything. If you make a moderate income and save consistently, you are building power. If you make a high income and consume almost all of it, you are renting the appearance of success while delaying the substance of it. This is why wealth building on a normal salary begins with control, not deprivation, not misery, not extreme denial. Control. You need to know where your money goes. You need to notice which expenses are adding genuine value and which ones are just routine leakage. You need to be honest about the difference between comfort and inflation, convenience and waste quality, and branding reward and self-sabotage. And that leads directly to the second principle: serious wealth is built from repeatable systems, not bursts of motivation. People love financial intensity for about 6 days. They slash spending, make a spreadsheet, watch 3 videos, swear. They are changing their life and then drift back into old habits because the plan depended on emotion instead of structure. Wealth does not care how inspired you feel this week. Wealth responds to what happens automatically. That means automatic transfers, automatic investing, automatic bill control, automatic limits, automatic contributions to retirement or brokerage accounts, automatic friction between you and impulse spending. If the system is good, it keeps working on the days when you are tired, distracted, bored, or tempted. This matters even more when your salary is not huge because you do not have endless margin to compensate for inconsistency. Your advantage is precision. Your advantage is making sure more of each dollar gets a useful assignment. That is also why the third principle is so powerful. You do not need to make an extraordinary income if you become extraordinary at turning income into assets. This is where a lot of people miss the plot. They focus almost entirely on earning, which is important but not enough. Wealth is not built when money enters your life. Wealth is built when money stays, gets redirected, and starts working. Assets are what matter here. Investments, retirement accounts, business equity, cash flowing side income, appreciating ownership, anything that has the potential to grow, produce income, or strengthen your balance sheet over time. If your paycheck comes in and leaves without creating assets, then even a decent salary can keep you stuck. But if each month a portion of that paycheck buys ownership, then even a fairly ordinary salary can start producing very unordinary results. This is where compounding becomes your best friend. Compounding does not care whether you looked impressive at brunch. It does not care whether your car was newer than your neighbor's. It does not care whether you felt slightly behind 1 year. It cares whether you kept feeding the machine. A person investing steadily for years, even on a moderate salary, is doing something incredibly powerful. They are building a future that no longer depends entirely on their next paycheck. And that is when wealth becomes serious. Not when the income sounds impressive, but when the assets start carrying more of the load. Now let's make this practical. How do you actually build serious wealth without a huge salary? First, you need a strong cash flow foundation. That means your monthly financial life cannot be chaotic. Housing has to be reasonable. Debt payments have to be manageable. Everyday spending has to be visible. If your fixed costs are too high, it becomes extremely difficult to build wealth on a normal salary because there is no room left to invest. This is why housing decisions matter so much. Car decisions matter so much. Recurring expense decisions matter so much. These are not small side issues. They determine whether your income has room to breathe. People often underestimate how much wealth is destroyed by committing too early to expensive recurring costs. A rent or mortgage payment that stretches you, a car payment that becomes part of your identity, subscriptions, insurance levels, dining habits, convenience habits, financing arrangements all layered together until a decent salary somehow feels tiny. Serious wealth usually requires the opposite. A life that is solid, enjoyable, and sustainable, but not overloaded with fixed financial pressure. Second, you need to increase your investing rate whenever income rises, instead of upgrading your lifestyle at the exact same speed. This is one of the most important habits in the entire wealth building process. If you get a raise pickup, extra work, reduce a bill finish paying off debt, or create a new income stream, the goal is not to immediately absorb all of that improvement into more spending. The goal is to capture some meaningful portion of it and convert it into ownership. That is how moderate earners start looking surprisingly strong after 10 or 15 years. Not because they never enjoyed life, but because every improvement in income did not become permanent lifestyle overhead. Some of it became investments. Some of it became flexibility. Some of it became future peace. Third, you need to respect the math of time. This is where many people get discouraged too early. In the beginning, wealth building feels underwhelming. The first few thousand invested feels small. The first account milestones feel slow. The progress does not look dramatic enough. And because it does not feel dramatic, people become vulnerable to shortcuts, distractions, or financial envy. But that slow stage is normal. You are not doing it wrong just because the early part looks modest. In fact, nearly every serious wealth story has a boring beginning. The snowball is tiny at first. The contributions matter more than the growth. The discipline matters more than the visible result. Then one day, the balance starts moving in a way that feels different. The gains become more noticeable. The assets start helping more. The machine begins to show you why patience was worth it. That is why quitting early is so expensive. Not only do you lose momentum, you lose the stage where the math finally starts getting interesting. Fourth, you need to stop worshiping income and start optimizing net worth. Income is a flow. Net worth is a position. Income tells you what is coming in. Net worth tells you what is staying. And if your goal is serious wealth, the scoreboard is not your paycheck. It is your ownership. This changes how you think. You stop asking, how do I feel richer, and start asking, what strengthens my balance sheet? You stop chasing purchases that upgrade your image and start noticing actions that upgrade your actual financial position. Paying down high-interest debt can strengthen net worth. Building cash reserves can strengthen net worth. Buying low-cost diversified investments can strengthen net worth. Starting a side business with real demand can strengthen net worth. Keeping a reliable used car for longer can strengthen net worth. Avoiding unnecessary upgrades can strengthen net worth. This is one of the most underrated mindset shifts in finance. A person without a huge salary can still become very dangerous financially if they become obsessed with strengthening net worth. Now let's talk about side income because this is where wealth building can accelerate, even if your main salary is average. A huge salary is not the only way to increase financial power. Sometimes the answer is not getting one giant paycheck. Sometimes it is creating multiple smaller streams that give your finances more lift. A side income stream can be powerful because it often has a cleaner purpose. It is not always swallowed by the normal flow of life. Many people find it easier to invest side income aggressively because it feels extra. That makes it a beautiful wealth building tool. This does not mean you need a huge complicated business. It might be freelance work, consulting, tutoring, resale, local full services, content support, niche, digital work, project-based help, or a small business built slowly on the side. The exact vehicle matters less than the principal. Additional income aimed at asset building changes the timeline. And here is where the cheerful part comes in because this should feel empowering, not depressing. You do not need one giant breakthrough. You need a series of useful moves that compound. A controlled lifestyle, consistent investing, rising savings rate, lower bad debt, better financial systems, a side income stream, smart asset choices, patience long enough for the numbers to matter. That combination may not look exciting in a single month, but over years it becomes extremely hard to beat. Now let's go one layer deeper because serious wealth without a huge salary requires emotional discipline as much as mathematical discipline. You have to become hard to impress. That sounds simple, but it is huge. A lot of wealth gets delayed because people are too easy to influence. They are impressed by cars, neighborhoods, brands, social spending, the appearance of success, the pressure to keep up the idea that adulthood requires constant upgrading. They spend money responding to environments instead of responding to their own actual priorities. But if you want serious wealth on a normal salary, you need a stronger filter. You need to be comfortable being underestimated, comfortable being less flashy, comfortable saying no, comfortable skipping what everybody else treats as automatic. This is not about becoming joyless. It is about becoming selective. You still spend. You still enjoy life. You still buy quality when it matters. But you do not casually agree to the kinds of recurring costs that quietly consume your future. That level of discipline can look boring from the outside, but it looks beautiful when your assets start growing. There is also an advanced advantage that people with moderate salaries sometimes have. They are forced to learn good habits earlier. High earners can hide sloppy behavior for a long time. A big salary can cover waste, inefficiency, and poor structure. But when your income is more ordinary, you get faster feedback. You learn which habits matter. You learn how to prioritize. You learn how to build resilience. And if you stick with that long enough, those habits become a major long-term edge. Because once someone with excellent financial habits finally does increase their income, everything speeds up. That is why this path is so powerful. You are not only building assets, you are becoming the type of person who can handle larger numbers well when they come. And that brings us to one of the biggest truths in this whole conversation. Serious wealth is often built more by what you keep than by what you make. Of course, income matters, but what survives your lifestyle, what gets invested, what becomes ownership, what keeps compounding, that is where the real story is. You can build a surprisingly strong life on a non-huge salary. If you consistently do 3 things, live below your means, without hating your life, direct the gap into growing assets and increase that gap over time. That is the engine. And once you have that engine, you can start refining it. Maybe you improve tax efficiency. Maybe you increase retirement contributions. Maybe you learn more about low-cost investing. Maybe you optimize insurance and emergency reserves. Maybe you build a side business. Maybe you buy time back in one area so you can earn more in another. Maybe you gradually create a life where your expenses rise much slower than your assets. That is when serious wealth stops feeling like a fantasy and starts feeling like a structure. At this stage, one of the smartest questions you can ask is not, how do I get rich fast, but how do I make my financial life stronger every year? Stronger cash flow, stronger balance sheet, stronger systems, stronger investing habits, stronger resistance to lifestyle inflation, stronger ownership, stronger options. If you keep answering those questions well, wealth becomes much more likely even without some enormous salary headline. And let's not miss the integration point here, because this is where everything comes together. Building serious wealth without a huge salary is not about one perfect tactic. It is about alignment. Your spending aligns with your priorities. Your systems align with your goals. Your income aligns with ownership. Your habits align with time. Your choices align with the life you actually want. When those things align, even an ordinary income can do extraordinary work, because then your money is not constantly being pulled in opposite directions. It is being directed. It is being assigned. It is being used to build something. And what it builds slowly and then suddenly is freedom. Freedom from paycheck panic, freedom from financial fragility, freedom to make decisions with less fear, freedom to handle setbacks without collapse, freedom to choose differently later in life. That is what serious wealth is really for. Not just a big number on paper, not just a nice looking lifestyle, real strength, real margin, real options. So if you have been telling yourself that you cannot build serious wealth because your salary is not huge, I want you to drop that idea right now. Replace it with a better one. You may not need a giant salary. You may need a giant level of clarity. Clarity about what matters. Clarity about what drains you. Clarity about what deserves your money. Clarity about the difference between income and wealth. Clarity about the fact that repeated smart choices beat financial drama almost every time, because they do. And the beautiful thing is that this path is available to more people than they realize. Not effortless, not instant, not glamorous every day, but absolutely real. So take a fresh look at your financial life after this video. Look at your fixed costs. Look at your savings rate. Look at your investing system. Look at your habits. Look at your leaks. Look at your opportunities to create a little more income and a lot more ownership. Then start building. Not for appearances, not for comparison, not for some imaginary finish line that keeps moving. Build for strength. Build for options. Build for peace. Build for the future version of you who will be incredibly grateful that you stopped underestimating what an ordinary salary could become in the hands of an extraordinary plan.